Morning, everyone. I guess we'll get started. 9:38. There's quite a bit on the agenda, but I think we should be okay to get through it today, hopefully. So, need to call the meeting to order, and just to let everyone know that in the last couple of days there's been 2 resignations. So, regretfully announcing Patricia Fiore and Megan Kerrigan have left the committee. This, from a procedural standpoint, doesn't hurt us for quorum because it effectively makes the size of the committee 2 smaller. So quorum is half of the committee size plus 1, so we're okay that way. I think if 2 of you leave before the end of today's meeting, though, the meeting would end. So that's where we're at for quorum. Okay, yeah, I'm hoping to be done with, I always hope to be done by noon, and we'll see how we do. But so that's effectively quorum is 5, and we have 6 right now. So, and Councillor Schell is probably coming later. So if she gets here, we'll have a little bit more room. Just for the record. So we need a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Moved by Dawn, seconded by Jane. Sorry. So any changes proposed for the agenda? Okay, before we pass the agenda, I should just say that after a discussion with staff, I would like to highlight a little bit more what goes on at the working group level. Hopefully have a discussion here about it. These are our working groups where a lot of good work gets done. Often, because the working group reports come at the end of the agenda, often we're kind of rushed at that point and we kind of go through it and we don't get to discuss it. If that is the case today, because we run out of time, what I would suggest is that we actually defer those items so that they come at the beginning of the following agenda so that we do discuss them. Basically what I'm saying is I recommend that we don't gloss over the detail that's in the working group reports, that we need to be fully aware of what's happening there. We're kind of at a point where there's almost more happening at the working group level than at the committee level, so we have to discuss that a little bit because we're essentially the oversight body for the working group, so we have to be well aware of what's happening there. So if the time is late when we get to the working group reports, then I'll ask for a deferral. That's basically what I want to say. Anything else? Okay, so we'll vote on the agenda. All those in favor? And that carries. So the agenda is as printed in the same order. And now we have the minutes from April 18th. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Catherine, seconded by Dawn. Any errors, omissions, or comments? Seeing none, we'll approve the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. You have one there, right? Does he have to announce it? Yeah. So Mac, you do have to announce your form that you submitted. Or, so you're writing something right now? Yeah. Mac? Yeah, you have to just, for the record, you have to announce your pecuniary. Yeah.
Yes, I have one for 2 Sydenham Street. I've done work before, and I'm not working on it right at the moment, but I feel that I should excuse myself.
You've got that in writing, right? Okay, anything else? Okay, so there are no presentations. Are there any delegations? No delegations. There is one briefing. Ms. Fawcett, the manager of cultural marketing, will speak to the committee regarding 9 to 27 Brock Street, 230 Ontario Street, and 38 to 40 Princess Street.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Julie Fawcett. I'm the manager of cultural marketing for the City of Kingston, and I'm also responsible for the public art portfolio. So I'm here today to speak to you about follow up on a motion that came to council in April from Councillor Candon around the beautification of the parking lot right here. You can probably see it through the window at Ontario and Brock Street. In the report that was submitted to you, there are some details in there, but I just wanted to explain to you a little bit about the rationale about how we've kind of come to that. So this parking lot was acquired by the City of Kingston, I believe in October of 2017. And if you're familiar with it, you'll see there's a guardrail there with some posts. The spirit of the motion was really around the beautification of that corner. There was some concern, specifically from Councillor Candon, that we have a lot of tourists coming down here, as you know, in the summer. And if you are standing on Brock, you can see the beautiful buildings there. You can see the water, you can see the cruise, you can see the park, you can see City Hall, and you can see a guardrail with parked cars. So because the city now owns this parking lot, there was a wish to have something really kind of act as a way to liven up that space. Part of the challenge with this is the timelines. We really wanted to try to do something for this summer, and we only had a few months. So right here you can see there's a few things that we had to consider. Number one is if you're coming down Ontario Street and turning onto Brock, we need to ensure that pedestrians will be safe and also making sure that people who are actually walking on the sidewalk can also make sure that they have an unencumbered view on the side. So the corner right there on Ontario and Brock, we were advised by our colleagues in engineering to have 3 meters where we didn't have anything there. So in that little spot, that corner, Public Works has cleaned up that corner and will be putting planters there. There's also a sign at the corner that was hit by a snowplow, which has now been straightened. So in looking at this, we really had a lot of challenges. On the other side of the transit shelter, there's going to actually be a drop bike spot there. And also these guardrails here, really we're not in a position to be removing them quite yet because Parking and Transportation Services are really trying to figure out how they're going to deal with this parking lot in the future. So what we really wanted to do was have something that we could have that would be a bit of a barrier, but also making sure that we're kind of covering the cars, but that we're still making sure that there's accessible access to the parking lot and to the transit shelter. So we looked at a few different examples just online, and there's a lot of really great creative examples using hoarding and using fencing to show photos and art in public places. So this was one example that we saw that we just thought was really interesting. As you can see, there's a fence in front on the other side, but it's a really nice way to highlight photography in a bit of an industrial setting. This was another example that in the future, if we were thinking about replacing the guardrail with some sort of a fence, there might be some ways to integrate public art into the fencing. And again, a really nice use of didactic panels and photography. And this was the one that we really thought was kind of served as the inspiration for what we're looking at. So we're not able to, as I just mentioned, to actually replace the guardrails and the posts. So we had to try to find a solution that would be a temporary solution just for the summer that would go in between the guardrails and potentially be able to highlight some photography of the natural environment. So in the exhibits, in the report, you'll see the draft artist call that highlights what we're looking for, which is really around natural photography to highlight the landscapes of Kingston. So this is a draft engineer drawing from the engineer that we've contracted to work on this. And really what we're looking at is the development of a custom concrete base that would be poured, and then we would have frames that would be inlaid into the base. And then within with each base, which would be about 9 feet, it would be placed in between each the 2 posts. And then those 3 sections there would be photography. So we would have a total of 5 bases in front of the guardrails. And the really great thing about this is that we can reuse these bases and framing systems in the future, and we can switch out whatever we want for those photos. So we're proposing to have a theme of natural landscapes, as I mentioned in the artist call, to really try to highlight the fact that we're on the water, that you can see the park, and also not to detract from the landscape, which is really the build heritage. So we're really trying to get this done for the summer. And I think it's been a little bit of a scramble with the timelines, but I feel that this solution here will really help beautify the area. And again, we'll take it out at the end of October, and we can consult with the community at that point to see if they thought it was worthwhile. And if so, we can actually bring it back next year and do a call to feature other types of photography or public art. So I think that's it for my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Sorry, I apologize. I missed the exact where you're proposing to do this.
Okay, so there's a parking lot right on the corner of Ontario and Brock.
Yeah, I know that.
And so there is on the, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really see the video. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking the wrong way, sorry. Basically, yeah, the city acquired that parking lot from a private developer last year. And so it really is a very, very highly trafficked area. So east of the bus shelter up until the corner of Brock, there won't be anything really there. So we're trying to place these bases right in front of the existing guardrails. So there would be no issues around access to the parking lot, et cetera.
So that's right, Brock Street then?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
And sorry, I was looking at the window.
Mr. Newman has something to add. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just refer to the committee. Page 196 of the agenda, it actually illustrates the proposed location of the installation.
So I have a question. So so as chair of the committee, I'll just make a contextual comment. So you're basically, the proposal is, there's the engineering side, which is to erect these structures that will allow for photography, like large photographs to go on those panels. And then the way our input would be along the lines of maybe what content would be appropriate in the setting of the built heritage that's in the immediate area. Is that sort of what you're looking for?
So we have consulted with the Public Art Working Group, which reports up to the Arts Advisory Committee, and they really, we had talked about kind of what the content was going to be. It was felt around that group that anything that would be not really in keeping with the natural kind of setting might not be a good choice for that location, because we really are kind of in the heart of downtown. So certainly if anyone has any, thoughts of, if it's not photography or something else, we could certainly consider that. Currently, we have 3 artist calls open for other city locations, and they're all based on original work. So it would be digital art or painting or sculpture. So this was an opportunity. As you know, photography right now is incredibly popular. It's like an Instagrammable kind of nation. And so we thought that because we do have so many great photographers in Kingston, it might be another type of art to highlight. But certainly if anyone had any other suggestions around other types of art, we could certainly consider that. And also potentially next year have a different type of medium on those panels.
So that's an important point, is that this is something that could change each year, could have a different set of exhibits.
Yes, and the good thing about this design is that it's fairly portable. So they're actually, they can just be easily removed on site and used in other locations. We'd have to obviously just double check with the engineer in terms of safety, et cetera. But I think that this is a really good compromise for something that's temporary and to kind of test it out and see what the public thinks.
Okay, and I'll just maybe get the conversation started by saying first thing that jumps to mind is something else we've passed recently, or that council passed, that we talked about, or at least had the opportunity to, which was the public lighting of City Hall, the upgrades to the lighting system and the colored lighting that City Hall now has. So at that time, people mentioned, this is like was said, center of downtown. The City Hall itself is a tourist attraction. The public lighting had to be compatible with the heritage, and I know there was some concerns expressed here. This is right next door to City Hall, same immediate location right beside Market Square as well. Market Square itself is a heritage conservation district. So the architecture of Market Square has already been being protected by our legislation. This is on the border of that. So we have an opportunity to say what we think, what types of exhibits would be compatible with that heritage context, essentially, with the City Hall here and with Market Square and what that represents. I personally would comment that I'm okay with the suggestion of trying natural landscapes because they do not clash with the heritage, the built heritage that, I mean, let's face it, the architecture is in itself a type of exhibit in a way for the tourists, right? I mean, they come and they look at the buildings. They're also going to look at whatever we put out on these panels. So it has to sort of be, it has to fit, it doesn't have to match. And I think it's best that it is, the natural landscapes are a good good thing to try, but I would like to hear if anyone has any other ideas. Yeah. Right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I guess input that we give you would come later in the agenda, I guess. So did you know that you were expected to stay till?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yes,
so,
thanks for your patience.
All right. Well, just let that sink in. Is there any more questions for the presenter?
A jury here? Sorry.
Yeah, so as part of our public art policy, we do have, counselors are not part of the jury per se, but sometimes we will have ex officio, members to try to advise. But we typically go to our public art working group and ask them if they would like to sit on the jury, and then we'll often do a call out to community members. So at this point, the jury has not been determined, but we would certainly we actually have a public art working group meeting tomorrow. So we would certainly ask them if they would like to sit on that. And if there are members of the community that would be interested to sit on that, we would welcome that.
Thanks.
Catherine.
Just a quick question about the panels that are going up. I'm looking at page 196, and I see that it partially obscures the view of the car park, but not wholly. I mean, you still have an area where you see cars. And is there a particular reason for that? Just would seem as if to actually have that go right down from the opening at the beginning of the car park right down to the end would seem to really blank off the car park.
Yeah, so there was some concerns around access to shelter. So that was part of the reason why we weren't going all that way. And as I had mentioned, on the other side of the transit shelter, there's going to be a drop bike zone that will basically go to the end of that guardrail. And then on the other side, we need to keep, there's actually a bit of a stone wall that's on the corner that is adjacent to the start of the guardrail. So we had to keep that clear. So we kind of tried to put it in a place that we thought would be still, offer access to anyone who might be needing, in mobility issues to get to the transit shelter.
I have a quick question. The break in the guardrail that exists now that people use to get into the parking lot, is that going to remain?
Yes, it has to remain because it's the pedestrian exit to Brock from the parking lot.
Right, so no matter what we do, people will be able to see the cars through that opening at the very least, even if we had panels all along both sides.
Yeah, and I think ideally this is a way to beautify that space, but certainly obviously I'm not an engineer, but we can't have it's on a fence. It's really a way to beautify it. So there will obviously be a little bit, but I do think that it'll add to, at least to make it a little bit more attractive. And maybe in the future, there might be a way where we could work with our colleagues at the city to do something that would be a bit more almost of an obstruction. But that's not on the table at this time.
Any other questions? Okay, so this item is number sorry, where is it? Right, it's business item 8, under regular business, so near the end of the agenda. So if you had other things to do, you could always come back in an hour or so, and we probably won't have got to that.
Sure,
item yet.
certainly, I will be back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, do you want me to switch it back to that?
Next item would be business. So this is the regular business section. There's nothing under the first three subheadings. Under statutory business, as usual, there's several items. I believe there's 9. The first one is an application for a heritage permit, 1401 Highway 2. And Mr. Leary will be introducing the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this property is at 1401 Highway 2. It's known locally as the Milton Cemetery. It's located more than half a kilometer south of Highway 2 on a 30-foot high bluff overlooking the St. Lawrence River. It's a City of Kingston owned property, and over the past year or so, the applicants have been investigating the condition of the existing stone vault on this property with the assistance of architect Schultz and Zabak and engineer Michael Dent, as well as historian Craig Sims. As it has been determined that this vault is now in an advanced stage of disrepair, particularly with respect to the foundation and the north wall and the roof structure. The property itself is designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act back in 1984. It was originally owned on land, it was originally established on lands owned by Thomas Milton in 1820. It was enlarged in 1876 and then again in the late 1800s. There are approximately 100 burials on this property. They're commemorated by various monuments, markers, decorative fencing, etc. And as well, a limestone storage vault was constructed in 1877 on the property to store bodies over the winter while the ground was too frozen to inter. The last burial on this property was done in 1937, and the designating bylaw actually specifically refers to this building, and I quote, "A vault approximately 16 feet by 14 and a half feet is in the northwest corner of the cemetery." The application before us is under Section 33 of the Heritage Act for alteration. The applicants have requesting approval to repair and stabilize the structure, including an option to completely disassemble and rebuild the structure on a new concrete foundation. And they're investigating other options whereby the foundation walls can be replaced in situ. However, they wish to get the Heritage Act approval to do a full takedown and rebuild if necessary. The roof structure will be rebuilt in the same profile with new cedar shingle roofing, and the existing door will be repaired and replaced. And that's their view from behind. So this is the new building. A Stage 3 archaeological assessment was completed by Past Recovery Archaeological Services in order to determine the location of any nearby burials and to properly map an area to work without disturbing any of those burials. So that's what you see here. In terms of our review, according to the submission by the applicant, this structure had suffered serious neglect after this facility was closed in the 1930s. There was an initiative to repair the structure in the 1980s, which include almost an entire rebuild of the structure, particularly the west wall. The applicants are looking at an option now to disassemble and reestablish the whole building on one continuous foundation in order to keep it stable on the surface, on the ground. While staff encourage the applicants to restore and stabilize the structure in situ, it is understood that the subject property is not an active public resource. This vault itself is no longer has a service for a practical purpose, and its value is as a historical artifact or a monument and a heritage attribute of this pioneer cemetery. The dimensions, design, and characteristics of the structure have been carefully recorded, and the below-grade archaeological resources have been assessed and documented, and staff support the applicant's proposed plans to repair and rebuild this structure. We circulated this to the the usual agencies. A building permit is required, and we received no other substantial comments. The committee was circulated through Dash, and we received no concerns. Also, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this application.
Just to clarify something you said in the middle there, they're seeking approval for the complete reconstruction, but they don't necessarily know if that's going to be the way they go. Is that what you said?
If I could, Mr. Chair, the applicants and their agent are here, and I believe Mr. Schultz has a bit of an overview to provide the committee, and perhaps could clarify that for you.
Thank you. So, Ryan, if I can just close this and access the other? Just minimize it. There we are. Okay. Yeah, so I've just got a brief presentation that explains some of the investigation and the thinking and the options that we considered in putting together this proposal. So this is just a view of it. I know some of you have gone to see it. I'm not sure everyone has been. It's an incredibly beautiful site. And as Ryan noted, it's in the Milton Cemetery on the river east of town. The vault, there's a plan of it. So the first thing that we did when we started the project with Neil and his team in the city is a archaeological investigation. And one of the important things that had to be done was convincing the ministry that's responsible for the cemeteries that the vault actually had heritage value and was worth maintaining, because the initial response was cemeteries trump heritage, cemeteries are the most important thing, and the vault is not actually that important. So the initial report, and you have a copy of a part of that in your summary, along with the archaeological report, was to demonstrate the value, which has been accepted. Also to commission the archaeologists to do a series of test pits and their sort of TP that you can see on this plan, so that we could see the condition of the building underground, and also determine the extent of working space that would be available on the site. So that archaeological process is complete. A stage 3 investigation has completed. And the dotted red line shows the area of work where contractors would be permitted to work with an archaeologist present for any restoration work that's required or determined to be the best approach. We also, as Ryan noted, we have on our team structural engineer Mike Dent, heritage consultant Craig Sims, who most of you know quite well. We also had discussions with and brought him in to do some, to assist with the investigation, Patrick Jenkins, heritage mason. And so part of Craig's work, he spoke to Bob Cardwell and got information about the project that was done in the 1980s. And these are photographs that were taken at that time that Bob provided. You can see the photograph at the bottom. On the west side of the vault, there was a very large tree stump that was growing into the vault. And so it was necessary at that time to take down approximately a half of the building, save the stones, and then put them back to reconstruct the vault. So that work was done at that time, but it was not a complete rebuild. You can see the northeast corner, which is the upper part of that lower photograph. That wall was not taken down below grade. And you can see, here's some of the restoration work done at that time. And the original building was almost a dry stone wall. There was limited mortar, and in investigating some of the foundation walls below ground, we can see some of the original mortar and how little of it there actually was. So these are photographs that were taken after the test pits were dug, and showing some of the conditions underground So if you go there now, some of the foundation walls underground are no longer visible. The other condition is the roof that was rebuilt in the 1980s has largely failed, and so it does need replacement. This is a photograph of the back wall or the north wall of the vault below ground. You can see it extends not very far below ground, and you have a series of open joints. And it's in this corner that we have the largest cracks that move through the entire walls of the building. And there's the northeast corner of the wall. This is a view inside the vault of the northeast corner, and that structural crack that you can see in the center of the photo extends down behind that steel plate, which was originally on the door to the vault. So we looked at, with Craig and Patrick and Mike, a number of options on how to restore the vault. And one of the feedback from Neil's team is that it's very difficult for the city to go back every couple of years and do repair work or maintenance work. And what they're really looking for is a solution that would stabilize the building and allow maintenance work to be minimized moving forward. And so after we considered really two options, one would be to repair the walls as they are and partly rebuild parts of the walls. And a second option would be to carefully record the stones, take everything down, put a continuous concrete foundation under the entire vault, and then rebuild above that. And this foundation wall would be completely below grade and therefore invisible. One of the challenges on the site is it's built into the slope of the hill, and you can see on the right of that lower photograph, part of the existing wall is below grade. You have water draining down the hill, water infiltrating through the soil, and a kind of continuous freeze-thaw action. So in order to minimize ongoing maintenance work and stabilize the building, the best option would be to build a continuous reinforced concrete foundation under the entire vault, which would be invisible to view, and build above that. Part of the issue with the existing building is you have a mix of conditions. You have the foundation walls below grade that are essentially dry stone wall. Then you have above that the rebuilt walls from the 1980s, which used, by current standards, at the time they used what was the best thinking for mortar mixes. By current standards, it's harder than we would typically do in a restoration work now. And so you have a fairly rigid wall sitting on a very unstable wall, which is sitting on soil, which is quite wet and has no frost protection. And so while generally good practice would be to rebuild as little as possible, reuse the existing material as much as possible, do minimal intervention, in this particular case, the conclusion of the team is that the best solution in the long term would be to completely rebuild it, particularly when you consider that you'll have to rebuild the roof. And so to rebuild the roof over a partially restored wall and then come back and need to do additional work in the future seem to be, in the long term, a less cost-effective and better way to manage the building. So that's a kind of overview of the thinking or the reason behind the approach.
Great.
The work would be done next spring. So the idea was that we would go through the budget process this year, city budget process, finalize the approach, and then in the late winter of next year, tender the project, and then do the work in the ideal conditions next spring and early summer.
Thank you. Just the procedural rules allow for a 5-minute presentation, and then questions normally are directed at staff, but in case if there's something technical that we need to ask, I'll allow questions to the presenter. Does anyone have such questions? Mac?
I have two questions, but taking the walls down and putting them back up, do you actually label the stones, or are you just using the same stones in the building?
Yes, using the same stones. Now, of course, not all of the stones will survive that process. There will be some that need replacement, either because they're cracked or whatever.
So do you try to reuse, like, the cornerstones that are most prominent? And
yeah, and that we would obviously, the focus would be on the ones that are the most visible, to keep as much as we possibly
the one
can.
other question is, you said you had water problems with the water coming down the hill behind the house. I saw in the one drawing that isn't shown in our photographs where there seems to be like a V in the ground. Is that some kind of a French drain, or?
Well, that's what we propose to do. So the next door neighbor, which is Hans Westenberg, who's also on the cemetery board, obviously is very interested in doing this. So we're able to go on his property, put a bit of a swale,
A berm, yeah.
and then direct the water. And there's in the archaeological plan, we do have approval to create a small French drain. And so we would put weeping tiles. So that would improve the existing situation, but it's at the bottom of quite a large hill. So you would never be able to completely eliminate the groundwater.
Before we go any further, it's brought to my attention procedure that we must follow, and that it's the same for all applications. So questions from members of the committee to staff only, and then members of the public and applicants can speak, but everybody is allowed 5 minutes. So we've reached that time now. If there are further questions you need to make up your decision is whether to recommend approval of the permit, right? So those questions really should be directed at staff, and then we still have to let other members of the public speak. Any further questions to staff? Catherine?
Is the proposal just to put the cement foundation under the walls, or will we still have a dirt floor?
Leary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that it's a sort of like a ring foundation that will just stabilize the walls. I don't believe there's any work proposed for the floor at all, as this building really doesn't have a purpose, so it'll still be dirt, as I understand it.
That's correct.
Any other questions for clarification? Don?
Yes, it's partly about procedures. I mean, this is a difficult application to deal with, and you're quite aware that it'd be preferable to disturb the building, less than is being proposed. But and I think you mentioned in your analysis that there is still ongoing consideration of the different options. So what puzzles me is, well, I'd like to know what is the state of those other considerations. For example, I gather Patrick Jenkins has been involved in this, but we don't have any input from him. And it seems inappropriate to me that we're being asked to approve, I guess, what you might say, an extreme solution to the problem without knowing enough about the alternative scenarios. So, I would like to have more information and more input on what these sort of less drastic approaches would be.
Any more information that's not included in the package about the all possible ways to treat the problem?
Certainly, planning staff doesn't have anything further to add than what's in our report. However, I noticed the manager of parks is over here and perhaps could add to this.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Unsworth?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I believe the intent of my team and Jerry was to, and the other consultants who reviewed the site, was to develop a plan that would permit so that flexibility to reconstruct the facility for a long-term, sort of relatively low maintenance asset if required. So I think the reality is that once we get into the north and east sides, which are completely eroded below the grade and really do need to be fully reconstructed in some method, I think as you tie to the few sections that may have been reconstructed in the 80s, where they're a little more currently stable, although not authentic necessarily to their original condition, I think we have to have that flexibility to be able to make the judgment call as to whether we keep going, take it all down, and rebuild it all up in a good fashion, or whether we can restrict ourselves to the most severe locations, which are really the ones that were essentially not repaired originally. So I think that's the answer to that question.
Okay. So as chair, I would like the committee to focus on the input that is being sought. That is, we do not control the decision of to what extent the final reconstruction takes, because the proponent and the Parks Department will need to make that decision at a future time when the work is underway. So basically we don't have the answer to some of your questions, Don, about what options have been considered, because they're not at that point yet. And that's why the recommendation asks for approval to alterations to include the repair and or full reconstruction. So that's what's a little bit odd about this permit application. And I guess just to confirm, if staff could tell me, am I correct in assuming that a heritage permit is valid if it's sort of unspecified because it is an important heritage question whether or not full reconstruction is done. Is a heritage permit under the Heritage Act valid if that leeway is left in the recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is. What's before us is an application to repair this structure, and that could involve a complete rebuild, and that's what's being sought. So the heritage permit would be to allow the complete undertaking to restore this building to a stable condition. So it would include whatever means necessary, and we've tried to elaborate on that in the motion. So.
Okay, so the options that you have as members of the committee, after we're done the questions, and when we get to deliberations, where we're not yet, your options are to support the current recommendation as is, or amend it because it's a Part 4 application. The recommendation that we make to council, we're allowed to amend. This is not a Part 5 application. So those are the options. So you either support what's there or you propose changes. We'll get there when we get to deliberations. In the meantime, if you need any more information that's not, clarification information that's not in the package, I'll allow, but we need to keep moving. So now we go to the remaining members of the public that may wish to speak to this application. State your name.
Peter, City of Kingston, heading 1. Because if anybody who's tried to deal with cemeteries knows that you've got a whole set of different regulations, and anybody who knows that you're dealing with stuff which is still uncovered underground knows that there's a further complication. I would hope that what you just said, that you approve this in principle, but I wonder if you can add in the recommendations that there be regular reports back to this committee.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. We hear from all members of the public, and then staff has a chance to respond to any questions. Any other members of the public? Okay. Does staff want to respond to that question?
Only to say, Mr. Chair, that this is a Part 4, and if committee wishes to add a condition, they certainly can in that respect. Our Parks Department communicate well with us, so I'm sure they'll keep us in the loop, but if the committee would like a report back, then I imagine you can add that as a condition.
Just for context, so when in other times we've approved some alterations, the conditions are put in place and staff follows up on the conditions. We don't necessarily get that feedback as the committee that staff has done that follow-up, but it happens on all the files. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Yes, we keep on top of these. If I can add that perhaps correspondence to the clerk's office from our Parks Department might be the simplest way to keep the committee updated.
Thank you. All right, so we need a mover and seconder for the recommendation so we can debate. Moved by Mac, seconded by Catherine. So the recommendation is that we approve the permit, and I'll say it again, alterations to include the repair and or full reconstruction of the stone former storage vault, and there are 3 conditions included. Building permit, the masonry works according to the policy, and the, I guess, the most the specific one, which is number 3, the repaired reconstructed building shall match the existing in form and detailing. Who wants to go first? Don.
I do have difficulty with this application and the recommendation. It's a very difficult situation. I'm certainly not saying anybody's right and anybody's wrong, but I really don't think I can support the recommendation. I think from time to time, the committee has had applications to demolish and rebuild the property, and we've had reservations about whether that's necessary, and sometimes we've had different opinions about whether it's necessary or not. In this case, I think we need more opinions before we should be ready to make a decision, because we're making a decision that affects the heritage value. Even, if it's torn down and rebuilt, you're still losing the authenticity of the structure. And so the proposed solution is kind of the gold standard for building construction, but it's not the gold standard for heritage conservation. I think we all recognize that would be preferable to do a kind of gentler renovation that doesn't have such a serious effect on the structure. Now, there's also, we've heard here and heard in other cases that city doesn't like, well, we've heard the statement, we don't want to come back every 2 years or 3 years to patch it up again. And that's understandable. But, sometimes that may be the best solution, may be the most economical solution. And this is another element that this committee doesn't normally look at budgets and costs of alternative approaches. But I think it's bound to be very important here, because when you look at what has to be done here, complete removal of stones, excavation for foundation, pouring concrete, the digging is to be done by hand. There's no way you can get machines in there. There's very little space between these grave markers. Everything has to be done carefully by hand. An archaeologist is supposed to be present during all of this. I think the cost will be out of sight, totally unreasonable. The city or somebody has to make decisions about, is it worth doing this amount of work for this building? And, quite honestly, they may say, is this the best use of the taxpayers' money?
Okay, try to stick to the heritage aspects, because what you're straying into now is something that councillors look at, the budget, the city budget.
Well, that's true, but I don't think you can, the heritage quality of the result is bound to depend on the money, the budget. Normally, we don't talk about it. Anyway, I think you understand the point. But I would certainly favor an approach which costs much less and maybe You'll have to come back every 5 or 10 years and do a bit more repointing. I think, you know, to me, from the interior, I thought the interior walls looked pretty solid. And so you could maybe just do some underpinning from the inside, which wouldn't disturb the cemetery area, and some repointing around the outside, and that'll be good for another 20, 30 years. So I'd like to have that kind of information so that the committee can make the appropriate decision.
So yes, each have 5 minutes. Does anyone else wish to speak? Mac.
In principle, I agree with the city not having to come back every few years and do repairs. And I was going to say I totally support this because I think a proper foundation will then have the building done for, you know, another 100 years or something like that, except maybe a bit of roofing. But I must say, after listening to Don's arguments there, and I know these aspects are going to be explored as to what is possible to rebuild and what isn't possible to rebuild. But maybe I would suggest that maybe we be brought back into the loop once a bit more examination has been done. You know, maybe, you know, economically, it does make more sense spending so much every 10 years as opposed to spending an entire whack right now, you know. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to for.
Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? I have something to say, but I was going to go last, or I was going to go after everyone's had a chance. Sorry, Don, you've already spoken in one round, but you can get another chance, but I should do Evans first. Does anyone else want to say anything right now? Okay, what I have to say might help frame your thoughts. Essentially, what Don has already said could be boiled down to the question of, is the value of a fully reconstructed vault here significant enough to justify the cost of the reconstruction and to sacrifice the authenticity of what is remaining that is the original? Now, that's the question, so let's just recap what we know. One of the walls has already been reconstructed. The foundation has never been reconstructed. It's proposed that a modern foundation, concrete foundation, be placed underneath invisibly, and then everything reconstructed. But what you'll have is a fully reconstructed structure in the same shape of a heritage structure. So this is what we have to, in the context of what precedent are we setting as a Heritage Committee if we say you can reconstruct a structure and maintain some authenticity? We need to weigh in on that. We need to give our opinion on that. Because there will be applicants that own heritage homes in heritage districts or outside of heritage districts that are going to suggest the same thing. In fact, we've dealt with one a couple of years ago. They're going to suggest, because for engineering reasons, they need to reconstruct. And we at that time said, actually, you need to do everything you can to repair and preserve the existing, because that is the heritage gold standard, as Don said. As a heritage, as the people that advise council on best practices for heritage, you know, we can't stray too far from that principle. Now, here we've got an extreme example, as Mac mentioned, right? That an extreme example where it may well be, of all the cases we look at, one of the most justified for a modern foundation. And the structure is small enough to suggest that that's even feasible, but the cost will be significant, and that's the missing piece. So I think I agree with both of you, and I think what we really need to do is defer this and have staff come back with cost estimates of the two main options, reconstruction versus repair. And the repair estimate has to contain a periodic element to it. So how often, and that's a very difficult estimate to make, but how often will it need to be repaired and what will be the cost? And the cost, of course, will go up with time. We need to be able to compare apples to apples when we recommend this to council. At the end of the day, council is going to really want the hard fact. What are our two choices? There's clearly two choices here. and we don't have enough information to make the decision today. So the decision we're really making is, do we go ahead and trust the process and give the permit, let them figure it out and take our hands off? Or do we stay involved, ask for a deferral, and get that cost estimate of the two options before we make the decision, before we make the recommendation to council? So I guess, unless someone else has something to say, I'm going to move deferral. So the clerk is saying that before we make the deferral, we need to have the wording very carefully thought out. So maybe we have to take a recess to do that. But Paige, did you want to say something?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Just wondering if we could give Mr. Unsworth a chance to speak on the timing issue, if there is going to be a deferral, so the committee has the benefit of all of that information.
Time is debatable in a deferral. So once the deferral is made, you can debate. It's because it's debatable. We can get that information. Does anyone want to say anything before I move deferral? Because once you do that, that's the direction that you go in, and you have to decide on that before anything else happens. Seeing none, we'll take a short recess. I'll talk to staff, and I'll write a deferral motion, and then we can debate that. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I don't see oh yes, the Vice Chair. Okay, so I have an amendment. It's not a deferral. Turns out with discussing with staff that cost estimates are not feasible this time that would be of any use. They wouldn't be very accurate. So, and the cost estimates, we will find out I've got another way of getting that information, and that is with a reporting back addition. So I've got an amendment that adds a clause at the end of the recommendation that reads as follows, where remove the word and replace with the sentence, with the understanding that repair is the preferred option and that reconstruction will only be considered as a last resort. And then the conditions, add condition number 4, that staff report back to Heritage Kingston regarding the direction the project takes. So that's my amendment. I need a seconder. Seconded by Dawn. Now, because I made the motion, I'm no longer the chair. So Dawn, you're the chair. Okay. Mac, I saw your hand. Did you want to second the amendment, or did you want to chair? You want to second? Okay, so seconded by Mac, and Dawn, you have the chair.
All right, we have an amendment moved and seconded. Is there a discussion of the amendment? Yes?
Yeah, just obviously they're sort of self-explanatory. We need to always recommend repair when possible. That's what Don started out by saying, even in his dash comments. I think that's correct. That's what we have to recommend to council. So we do that by spelling out that repair is the preferred option and that reconstruction is a last resort. If reconstruction is eventually chosen, they will have to report it to us, and then the transparency is maintained back to Heritage Kingston, and therefore we close the loop and we get the direction. And if they manage to repair, great, we get that report as well.
All right. Thanks. Any other comments? Ready for the motion for the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I return the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you for the indulgence of the members of the public that are present for other files. We will keep moving now. We're on the next one, which is, oh, sorry. The only thing that passed was the amendment. Now we have to vote on the amended recommendation. So, Catherine, we have amended the recommendation. I'll read the full recommendation. So this is what we're voting on. That is recommended to council that alterations to the property at 1401 Highway 2 be approved in accordance to the details described in the application, with said alterations to include the repair and or full reconstruction of the stone former storage vault, with the understanding that the repair is that repair is the preferred option and that reconstruction will only be considered as a last resort, that the approval of the alterations be subject to the following conditions, 1, 2, 3, same as in the package, and then added condition number 4, that staff report back to Heritage Kingston regarding the direction the project takes. Any final discussion? I'll call the vote on the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And good luck, Mr. Unsworth, Mr. Schultz. So now we move on to the next application, 5509 Highway 15. And we'll get the introduction from staff. Thank you.
All right, so I'm presenting 5509 Highway 15, which is located on the east side of Highway 15, north of Upper Brewers Lock, so quite far north of Highway 15. The subject property contains a 1.5-story detached brick dwelling referred to as the Murray House, and we've had an application for alteration under Section 33 and demolition under Section 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So the subject property was designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act in 1984, and it was constructed in 1877 for John Murray. As I mentioned, it's a one and a half story dwelling constructed of red brick, and the house consists of a main rectangular block with a clapboard rectangular wing at the rear forming a T-shaped floor plan. So some of the other heritage attributes, since they're not listed in the older designating bylaw, include the dentiled cornice under the projecting wood eaves, the wooden sash windows, wooden lug sills, brick arches over the windows, the original entranceway opening, decorative verge board trim on the front gable, and a semi-elliptical window with original glazing in the front gable window. So there's 3 areas of work proposed in this heritage permit application. Demolition of the rear wood frame addition and demolition of an external cement block chimney. Extensive brickwork repair and repointing, as well as alterations to the garage or drive shed. And I just want to mention that in addition to this heritage permit before you, staff are also processing a delegated authority heritage permit, which generally relates to repairs and alterations to windows, doors, eaves, decorative trim, walkways, and steps. Cumulatively, these 2 heritage applications represent numerous urgent and necessary repairs. And for example, an emergency approval to replace the existing asphalt roofing with a new steel roof was approved on April 6th. Additionally, the applicant is undertaking extensive interior renovations to allow for continued residential use of this dwelling, but these are not subject to a heritage permit under Part 4 of the Act. So a report by Robert Cardwell provides an analysis of the history of this rear wood frame addition, which is based on sound research and a physical examination of the structure. The 1984 designation bylaw suggests that this rear addition may be the original building on the site and predate the main brick house. However, Robert Cardwell demonstrates through his examination of the 1860 Walling County map and the 1851 and 1861 censuses that an older 1-story log building once stood in the approximate location of that main brick house. So through on-site investigations, he also concluded that the existing addition is likely a late 1800s or early 1900s structure based on its construction material and details. And moreover, inside the addition's attic space where the roof meets the southern wall, there were 2 clear imprints of previous rear addition roof lines. Staff visited the site on April 9th, and it is clear that this extension or addition on the back is in very poor condition. The joist ends are floating free of the foundation in several places, and the structure does appear to be compromised. So looking at Robert Cardwell's report and staff site visit, this rear wood frame is deemed to be beyond reasonable repair, and staff do support the demolition. This cement block chimney that you see on the screen on the west elevation is a relatively modern insertion, and again, at the time that it was constructed, it actually necessitated the removal of a section of the original wood eave with the soffit and facial and the dental frieze board. So its removal and repair of the eave and dental frieze board will actually be an enhancement to the heritage value of the property. The Murray House is in need of extensive brickwork repair and repointing, which is why it is actually part of this heritage full heritage permit and not a part of the delegated authority bylaw. Basically, there are areas where bricks are falling out. Many of the jack arches above the windows are deteriorated. Bricks have actually come out. So they need to be rebuilt, and every single elevation of this building requires repointing of the mortar joints. This work is necessary for the long-term conservation of this property. And lastly, the proposed alterations to the drive shed are compatible with the form and massing of the garage and will be an enhancement to the overall cultural heritage value of the property, particularly the removal of that blue vinyl siding. Included in this application are a proposed new metal roof, as well as new garage doors. And it's just worth noting that one of our members did note that the high visibility of the garage from Highway 15, that consideration should be given to the specific design of the garage doors, ensuring that they're compatible with the architectural design of the main house, and staff have included a condition requiring that we receive details pertaining to the finalized door design. So before you is staff's recommendation to approve this application, subject to the following conditions.
So questions from members of the committee? Yes, Mac.
When I look at that graph that showed the brick arches falling above the windows, it looked to me like it wasn't being arched; it was just flat. And I wonder whether there's a steel angle in there, or it doesn't seem to be. There's no arch work. What is that was holding that up? Which is part of the reason why it's failed, obviously. But if I don't see a steel angle there now. And, traditionally it should be arched in order to give it strength so it holds together, so I understand completely why it's falling. I'm just wondering what is there to support it, or what is going to be in the new version.
Mr. Chair, can I propose who is the applicant and owner answer that question?
Sure. I'll allow.
Yes, thank you. The viscers above the windows, they are a straight viscer. They have a slight angle on them. The brickwork on the house is three layers of brick, and those viscers are just supported by not any metal or anything else. They just historically were put in place with the mortar, and so. The stonemason who's going to do the work on the building, he is going to take out, because there's extensive cracking right up to the dentiled frieze board, he's going to take out the bricks as far up as he can where they're cracked, because water has gotten down in there, frozen, and caused the deterioration of the viscers. Not only that, but also the lug seals underneath those windows. The lug seals will be replaced with Douglas fir, which was the original lug seal material, and in keeping with the original lug seals, they'll be replicated and installed.
So there is necessary to put in a steel lintel or anything to support those arches?
He did not, and in keeping with the building, really, we believe that the only reason that those upper viscers cracked like that was because the soffit was cut out and the dental frieze board so that brick chimney could go through. And what has happened is water has migrated down into the brickwork there from the roof line and caused that cracking. So we believe that for possibly over 100 years, the bricks were fine in that location.
My suggestion would be, fir is a very good product, but something even better that would be white oak in terms of long-lasting, for sills. Thank you.
We're at questions from committee members to staff about the application. Don?
Just a minor, I noticed the garage roof is specified to be black. Is that because it's to match the house, the new roof on the house, which I'm not sure what color that is?
Correct. The intention is for the garage roof to match the new roof on the house, which is black. Sorry, charcoal.
Questions? Okay, so then we go to members of the public. Anyone from the public wish to address the application? Seeing none, we go to the recommendation itself. So see here, need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, and then I'll just summarize it. Moved by Mac, seconded by Dawn. Yeah, so there you see it up there. Essentially describes the work and then the conditions, usual format. Of course, this is part 4 format as well. So this is the recommendation we make to council if we pass it. And if council passes it, the permit will read as you see. Does anyone wish to comment? Yes, Don.
Excuse me, I want to emphasize something that I've already mentioned, so to speak, that the repairs to the brickwork are quite substantial, and I think there really should be I think that should be part of the building permit application, and also there should be a report from a knowledgeable mason on how the repairs are going to be carried out. So, and also, we know that there are masons and masons, and there's some masonry work that we see in the city is really disappointing. So it's important that or it will be an eyesore for decades. So I really urge the applicants to have a detailed report from the mason on how the work is to be done, including matching brick color and matching the mortar color so that it all looks good when it's done.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee? Okay, I'll call the question on the recommendation, which recommends approval of the permit. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Good luck with restoration. Right. Number 3 is a heritage permit in a Part 5 context, 45 King Street East.
So 45 King Street is located on the south side of King Street East in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The subject property contains a detached 2-story stone house designed by John Power in the cottage ornate style and constructed circa 1853. So we've received an application for alteration under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act to gain approval to remove the existing concrete brick chimneys on the east and west elevations and to build 2 new double flue brick chimneys with stone or cast concrete caps in an historically appropriate design. So 45 King Street East is rated as significant in the Heritage Conservation District Plan. We know that it was designed by John Power, well-known architect, local architect, and constructed in 1853. Specifically called out in its description is the west wall, which has a large central chimney breast which rises through the hipped roof to wide brick double chimney with decorated panels below the cap and slender chimney pots. An identical chimney is on the east wall. So the current concrete brick chimneys on the east and west elevations, as you saw on the previous slide, are not original to the 1853 construction or historic by design. As Patrick Jenkins explains in his supporting information report, the description of the chimneys that is in the old Sydenham HCD plan is largely taken from Margaret Angus's list of buildings of architectural and historical significance. This description that we see does not match the current existing chimneys, but rather describes the double brick chimneys that can be seen in a December 13th, 1928 Whig Standard photo clipping on the left there. Again, Mr. Jenkins' research also infers that the original chimneys appear to have been partially rebuilt at some point prior to the 1960s, when a photograph by George Lilly shows double brick chimneys like the 1928 image. but slightly different corbelling brick details, and also different, also shorter and lower space between the chimney columns, which is the right-hand image. Staff have reviewed the proposed design of the proposed new replacement chimneys and find it to be based on sound background research and analysis, including well-documented evidence. As proposed, the design closely resembles the double flue brick chimneys as illustrated in the 1928 photograph. The design for each chimney, east and west, includes a double flue brick chimney in silver buff brick with recessed decorative details, potentially in a buff tone brick, as well as a recessed panel at the base to create shadow effect, and toothed corbels under the cap. The cap will either be stone or cast concrete. Each double flue chimney will be 5 foot 4 inch wide and 121 inches tall. As both an individually significant building and a significant building in the old Sydenham HCD, the proposed replacement of the concrete brick chimneys with historically appropriate and designed clay brick chimneys is an enhancement to the designated building and a substantial contribution to the cultural heritage value of the district. The proposal strongly supports the goal for heritage buildings of the district plan, which states the goal to conserve and enhance the existing built heritage resources and protect them from inappropriate changes or demolition by encouraging retention and restoration of original features of heritage buildings based on archival and pictorial evidence. So this is a clear example of that goal. All works are to be completed in accordance with the city's policy on masonry restoration in heritage buildings and best practices in heritage conservation. So upon review of all of our submitted materials, staff have no concerns with the proposed application. And here's our approval, subject to the following condition.
Thank you. This is part 5. So the first thing is, Dawn, you made comments in dash. Were they all captured accurately? Okay. Then members of the public? Yeah. Then members of the public?
Peter Kingston, following last month's discussion, you need an extra condition here asking for a photograph of these chimneys after they've been built, because they are exactly the sort of inaccessible things that you were dealing with.
Any other members of the public? Okay, staff has a chance to, I guess, confirm that that last suggestion can be followed.
Mr. Chair, to clarify, we can directly liaise with Patrick Jenkins, so when he goes up to do the work, we could absolutely get him to take photographs of the existing chimneys, and hopefully as well of maybe up close ones of the proposed new ones. Thank you.
Thank you. So now members of the committee can add comments to the file in the oral form. Go ahead, Mac.
I wonder what color brick you can use.
What would be best is if you went and sat beside staff over here, and then you could make your question to staff, and staff can ask you if they need to.
Color.
So staff answer the question, but you go over by her and help her.
Sure. As I mentioned in the report, they are to be a silver buff tone, but I'll let Patrick explain maybe more in detail.
It's actually an imported brick from the Netherlands. It's I should have brought the panel to my truck. I'm sorry. It's a silver buff. So it's a light buff. It's creamy, but not as creamy as the Ibstock bricks that are available. But it has a slightly higher MPAs. Reason why I'm choosing it, it's got an MPA of 30 rather than 20, which the other bricks have. So it is a little bit lighter, a little in the lighter tones than cream tones. So, but it's creamy to buff tone brick, similar to the tones of the bricks at the Rose Mountain.
I just want to, I'd like to see a brick at some point when you have them ordered, or maybe spring of the next meeting, just leave with the staff, just for my own curiosity.
Sure. The panels are at Rigney. I've got it in my truck right now, but you can also see them at Rigney. Does carry them. It's a Skycon brick, and it's available locally.
Okay, so does it, Mac, did you want to put anything in the file, like a comment? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Catherine, seconded by Dawn. So this is part 5. So we're support, we're saying that we support council's approval. It's the council that gives the approval. So the alterations as described and the conditions, there's just the one condition about masonry works. So yeah, it's a yea or nay question, so I'll just call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck. This next one's the one for you, Mac, to leave the room. Or to, does he leave the room, the horseshoe? Yeah, you have to leave the room, and then if there are, that's it, okay, that's it, you have to be out of the room. Okay, so 92 Sydenham Street. We've seen this property before, so I'm assuming the introduction will be relatively brief so we can see where we're at this point in time.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. This application, or this property has been before this committee a couple of times. It is a half of a brick semi in Sydenham Ward, just south of Johnson Street on Sydenham Street. The applicant was before the committee in March for a similar proposal to repair the wood steps and replace them with a concrete, limestone-clad concrete step. They've currently withdrawn that application. They've resubmitted now and requesting a galvanized steel steps, railings, and landings painted black in the dimensions of the existing. So it'll be exactly the same size as what is there today. We received very little comments, I think, from circulated agencies. The building permit is required. Cultural Services notes that the metal staircase seems a better fit than the previous concrete one. Engineering will require an encroachment permit, and some comments about working within the city's right-of-way on Sydenham Street. And our utilities noted that there are some gas lines in the area, so to call first before doing any digging. We did receive a couple of comments from this group regarding the condition of the windows, the window that is behind this proposed structure, behind the current structure. It is in a state of what appears to need some work, some repair and painting. The applicants have noted that they don't feel it's going to be overly visible given the elaborate pattern on this metal staircase. So that's not in their current plan. Staff have included a condition recommending that they consider doing some repairs to it, which would necessitate a further permit under the Heritage Act. However, it's not part of the scope that is before committee today. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this application and the recommendations before you.
Thank you. I see a couple of you made comments in dash, and they've been summarized. Are those comments satisfactory? Don and Jane? Okay. Members of the public have a chance to comment, ask questions. Seeing none. So we've got the recommendation, needs to be moved and seconded. Again, this is part 5, so we support council's approval of the following. And it's, the installation of the front staircase and the, as it says in the package. Who would like to move this? Moved by Dawn, seconded by Catherine. Well, there's only 4 of you. Yeah. Any comments? Seeing none, it's again a yes or no. Oh, yes, Don, go ahead.
Well, it is a comment, I guess, sort of asked staff. I mean, there is a condition that a building permit shall be obtained, and the building department, in fact, made a comment that the guardrail, the guard and handrail must comply with the Ontario Building Code, including the triangular space. And it looks to me as if it doesn't apply. It doesn't comply. So I'm kind of puzzled why the applicants have not responded. Maybe they think it's okay, but somebody from the building inspector is going to come along with a 4-inch ball and see if it will fit through that gap. And if it goes through the gap, they'll require it to be changed. In the case of a wrought iron staircase, the changes will be pretty noticeable. And so I guess I really should have asked staff what the applicants are how they're going to deal with this.
Okay, well, I'll allow staff to respond, but really the only thing that the process allows is for you to add further comments, which the clerk takes down. So you've taken that down, clerk? So the building code and the 4-inch space, does staff have anything to say about that?
Mr. Chair, we'll ensure that the design of the railing complies with the Ontario Building Code as part of our peer review of the building permit when it comes in. That's the intent of that condition.
There, and your comments have been captured, so they'll be in the record. Any other comments to add to the record? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there a dog here? Oh, there is. He wants to speak. I'll call the question on the recommendation that Heritage Kingston supports Council's approval. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're, Mac, you can come back. We're on 79 William Street in the same Heritage District. Again, Part 5, same process as the couple last files.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I must admit, I am going to be fumbling through this a little bit. My counterpart had to run for a family emergency, so I'll do my best. She has laid out the description of this property in your report. It is part of the Sydenham District. It's designated under Part 5. The heritage value and attributes are in your agenda package. The owners of this property have a number of alterations that they are looking to do, including new roof, repairing the little circular dormer at the top, as well as repair some of the wood shingles on the siding of this building. There are also a new hip roof dormer that is going to the rear of the roof line, new metal shingles on the roof, and new metal sheeting over the eyebrow dormer at the front, and a small skylight on the side of the building. Brick repairs and lintels, wood shingles is necessary, and new eaves troughs and downspouts on this building. So the building is this one before you. Staff have reviewed this and are supportive of these alterations in their totality. There are a number of conditions in the recommendation that I will draw your attention to, including our required standard ones for building permits and compliance with the window and masonry policy. There are minor details to be determined as far as some of the shingle colors and such. So that is also included as a condition. In terms of comments received, of course, building permits are required. There are a number of summarized in your agenda package, and I'm not aware of any substantial concerns. And we recommend support. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, Dawn, you made comments in Dash. Were they accurately recorded? Okay. There is now members of the public may address the committee, and that includes the applicants. This would be the time to address the committee if they so chose. Seeing no comments, no one wishes to speak, we will move to the recommendation. So again, Heritage Kingston supports Council's approval, and it's the heritage permit. There is a variety of work there. It's all summarized as Ryan just did there. 7 conditions. Need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor? Or do we put comments in first? Okay, moved by Mac, second by Don. Does anyone have final comments to add to the file before we vote? Go. Yes, Don.
This is really a question to staff, but I don't think you asked us if we could questions. Condition 7, it says planning staff should be circulated the drawings. Elsewhere in the agenda, it says planning staff shall be circulated drawings and design. I think shall is probably the better word there. Is there any particular reason why it's changed to should instead of shall?
Oh, kind of like a friendly amendment. Is staff okay with the wording, planning staff shall be circulated?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So, James, just take note of that wording change there. Okay, so that condition 7 will be changed to read as requested. Any other comments to add to the file? Mac?
Maybe I missed that. He said they're going to use a metal shingle on the roof? Did I hear that correctly? I just wonder what metal shingle they're talking about, what it's going to look like. There's tons of variations. Is it historic or, just like a bit of information on that if I could?
If you want to just go over by the heritage planner there and you can help him give that information.
So the intention is to use a flat metal shingle with as little kind of profile as possible. I haven't actually found the specific product that I want to use yet. When I was speaking with Alex, I think that's captured in the conditions that, condition 5, that I'll run a sample by staff before proceeding. But in general, to answer your question, something that is reasonably smooth and reasonably visually inobtrusive. The idea, there's currently asphalt shingles on the roof. The roof joist cavities are insulated with moldy pink bat that came with the house when we moved in. So our intention is to rip that out and put in spray foam insulation. My sense is that with that unvented roof cavity, in order to have the shingles have a reasonable lifespan, I'd like to go with a metal product rather than an asphalt that'll really heat up. So that's the reason I'm thinking metal shingle. I read in the Heritage report, or in the Heritage District designation, that shingles are a preferred material, so in terms of aesthetics. So that's the reason for those decisions.
I'd be curious to see what you find.
Very good.
Yeah, so just to point out to members of the committee that condition 5 says selected metal roofing, which we've just heard has not been selected yet, for the outboard dormers shall be provided to the planning staff for review to ensure minimal impact to the heritage attributes. Is planning staff okay with sharing that information with the committee member when we get that information?
We certainly
Newman.
can.
Through Chair, yes, we can certainly circulate that through the committee chair to members when we have a more specific understanding of the type of tile to be used.
Okay. So the recommendation is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments does anyone want to include before we vote? Okay, we'll vote on that Heritage Kingston supports council approval of the permit. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Good luck with the work. Okay, we're now on number 6 of business, 3012 Creekford Road. This is the last heritage permit, which tend to be the most time-consuming of our business items, but not always.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report before you is a notice of intention to designate a property out on Creekford Road known as Zachariah David Farmhouse. This is the farmhouse here. It was reviewed as part of the Cultural Heritage Property Evaluation Project in 2015, and it was evaluated under the Ontario Regulation 906, and it has met those requirements. The Zachariah David Farmhouse is a good example of a mid-19th century stone vernacular farmhouse. Zachariah and Frances David and their 9 kids lived in this house. It was built in the 1850s to replace their log cabin. And then they farmed the land for many years. Zachariah was a roadmaster for the area. And this property contributes to the rural character of Creekford Road. And the full statement of and the full bylaws in your agenda package. The owners have provided input into the bylaw and are highly supportive of this designation and are pushing us to move it along. The working group, Historic Heritage Properties Working Group, has reviewed the draft bylaw and are supportive of the bylaw itself. And staff recommend that the notice of intent be served on the owners, and should no notice of appeal be in, that the designated bylaw be given 3 readings by council. Thank you.
Members of the committee have a chance to ask questions. Seeing none. Members of the public have a chance to comment or ask questions. Seeing none, we move to the recommendation, which is, as you see, it's basically the usual format, 1 clause for the designation itself and 1 clause for the notice of objection wording. It's the same with every designation. Who wants to move the recommendation? Moved by Dawn, seconded by Jane. Any comment? Okay, well, let's call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Number 7, Heritage Pre-Consultation Application, 8183 King Street East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will shortly turn this over to the applicants who will walk you through their plans. The property that you'll be looking at is at 8183 King Street East. It's designated under both Parts 4 and Part 5. It's a bit of a landmark property just across from City Park on the corner of Maitland. It was originally built in the 1840s for John Watkins, who's the name of the Watkins wing of the original hospital, KGH Hospital. It had serious alterations, significant alterations done in the 1880s, and has since had a number of alterations. So the new owner has a number of plans that they'll share with them. Their team from Alexander Wilson Architects and Andre Scheinman are here, and I'll turn it over to them.
Mr. Newman is going to say a couple words before we hear from the applicants. Just to remind the committee about the process of pre-consultation. So this is like a friendly process where we can interact with the applicants before the application is actually made. But I understand there is some concern about getting started on the exciting work. So go ahead, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was the only thing I wanted to add, is that this has been a very iterative process. Alex Rose Thompson has been working very closely with the applicant and their architects and their heritage consultants to address some of the concerns that we have had with earlier iterations of this project, and it continues to evolve. So the owners have made an application for a permit to be presented to the committee in June. We'll sort of gauge that timing based on the feedback that we received today, and if we have to circulate revised drawings as a result of the feedback that we receive and the design iterations or changes that need to be made to address areas of concern, we'll certainly do that, and that may dictate whether or not we're comfortable bringing a recommendation forward in June. So we are moving this forward with some urgency, or at least some desire to be expeditious, but we recognize that there's a need to consider and take pause on the comments we get today. So anyway, with that, I'll introduce Mr. Derbyshire to present his vision for the property. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, committee members, city officials, and guests, I'm delighted to be able to be here with you today and to share a little bit about kind of what we're thinking about with the DNA of this property. I'm very quickly going to be outdistanced by any of your questions, given what I've seen here earlier. So in just a very brief moment, I'll turn it over to our architects and historian to really be able to bring this more to life for you. But if you'll indulge me just for a moment, I wanted to share with you sort of our attachment to this property. And I know some of you have heard this, so I apologize for the redundancy. But you know, this, my wife and I and our three boys are very excited to be returning back home to Kingston. You know, this has been where our family has lived for generations. And as sometimes happens, you leave for work. But when we were given the opportunity to return to any place we wanted to live, you know, it certainly was Kingston. We didn't even have to pause for a moment to know that is where we wanted to be. And interesting enough, the house we had in mind also was equally as obvious to us. Little did we know the journey that we had undergo over the last couple of years to get to this point in front of you today. It has been a journey for us over the last 2 years to be able to be here. But the indulgence, if I go back in time, you know, I proposed to my wife on the day that I proposed to my wife. Now, this is an interesting story, I think, nonetheless, but you may all find it not so much. But the day I proposed to my wife, we were attending church at St. George's, as we've done for years and years and years, and we went to Morrison's for breakfast, walked down to Murney Tower. I proposed to her at Murney Tower, where my father had proposed to my mom. And we walked back up King Street, and she had said yes by that time. So I was relaxed at that moment, and it was, you know, certainly, you know, a good moment. And we stopped outside of 81 King Street, and this had been a house that we had always loved. And as students with debt up to here, it was something completely out of the realm of what we ever would have dreamed a possibility. You know, and my commitment to her that day is I will work hard, I'll do what I need to do, and someday we'll have a house as nice as that one. You know, sure enough, as life takes you on a journey, and 25 years later, you know, we're at a point that we've now purchased this house. And if any of you know the Westenbergs, it took us 2 years to get to that point. You know, Hans so loved that house. You know, that ability to really get it and to reimagine it from what it is today as an 8-unit apartment building back to a single-family home has taken some real imagination as we start to think our way through, and some real research and some real contemplation. And when Greg mentioned it's been an iterative process, I think we're on iteration 46. You know, it really has been in real time. And, you know, the city has, you know, has just been very collaborative and very wonderful for us to work with, you know, through the process. They've made themselves very available. Ryan, you and Alex especially have just been terrific partners in helping us learn, in helping us go towards the general direction to really bring back life to the DNA of this, what I think is truly a wonderful property. So I will stop talking now because you want to get on to the what matters most. And will I turn it over to Sandy? Perfect.
Hello, I'm Jen. I'm one of the architects at Alexander Wilson Architect. Like was previously said, we've been going back and forth based on initial comments from you guys, as well as meetings with Heritage. So I just wanted to hand out the most recent rendition of where the property is at so we can have a current conversation.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's great. Great. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sandy Wilson. I'm the architect from Alexander Wilson Architect, and I'm joined by Jen Dementor, who's also an architect in my office, the Derbyshires, Ryan, Paige, and Mr. Newman. It's been a really interesting process which we've been moving through for the last couple of months as we try and tackle the many different characters of this building and the various time zones which it represents. As Ryan was saying, the building was first started in 1840 and was a two-story brick building, which is where the main mass of the building is now. It had a hipped roof, and there was a barn or stable to one side where that existing stable is right now, or garage. In the 1880s, there was a new addition put on, which is that low two-story brick, sort of cream brick with the green trim between the garage and the main house. And the house itself was recreated in the Queen Anne revival style, which is when a lot of this beautiful woodwork was added, the half timbering, the Tudor elements, which are part of the Queen Anne revival. And just the amazing detail, which it really, if you've got the time, you can take a look at it. The woodwork around that main porch is fantastic. I can't think of another very few examples of that kind of quality in Kingston. As you move around the house, there's another story. Now, Ryan, do I just click? Just scroll. Yeah, I'm going to email this to somebody. Do you know how to do this, Jen?
I'll see if I can grab it.
I'm an old-fashioned architect. This is technology.
Okay. Oh, or just scroll at the bottom. No.
Where's the scroll bar?
No. Can I just, there we go. Okay.
There we go. This is
Two finger scroll.
Another iteration, though, too, which is another layer, was added in 1929 when the building was converted from a single-family home to an apartment building. And so this is the west elevation. You can see on the bottom is a kind of a wrap of one story, of which we think was probably poured concrete. This was added onto so that they could add bathrooms, kitchens, maybe extending the bedrooms. And this wraps around to the far side. Let's see if I can do this. This one-story wrap. You do that again, I'm sorry. Where you're going to, once again, see that wrap is a one-story, and which is porches and additions, again, to make that an apartment building. The back is kind of falling apart in terms of that Queen Anne style. But I think there's lots of opportunities for expressing what was there originally, both in terms of the 1886 Queen Anne, as well as the modern needs of the building to make it into a comfortable, modern, single-family home. So it's my nervous hands. I think let's even forget about it. We'll leave those images up. You've got a paper copies of everything there. It's probably better that we make this a question, you asking us some questions. If there's anything which we can clarify in your minds, we would like to get your feedback so we can come back to in June for a decision, and it might be maybe with many conditions added onto it. That's okay. There's a good listing of the various things which we do want to do. So we're talking about. Pardon me?
Do you want me to take it through that?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
All right. So,
Just remember to speak into the mic because the meeting is actually recorded and you can only get the audio if you speak into a mic.
All right, if you guys want to turn to partially through here and look at the existing north elevation, I've done up a photo that really looks at what sort of alterations, so we can go through it sort of piece by piece and better understand. With this project, there's a lot going on, so it's hard to sort of communicate everything we're doing on all the different facades. For the King Street facade, this is the most prominent facade, and this is the one we're really focusing on restoration. Our intention is to restore the half timbering, restore the woodworking, restoration of those beautiful entry doors, as well as the projetting, which is that band, the geometric band you see that runs across. So in terms of what we're rehabilitation, we're looking at here we go. These two windows, replacing them. They're currently aluminum clad, no longer the original windows. So we would like to replace them back to the original size, and based on the patterning of the dormer on the other side. We're also looking at removing this part right here between the 1.5-story building and the garage. From the fire maps, we can tell that wasn't original. This has been infill, probably sometime due to the apartment additions. And we'd like to put a addition here with a height-appropriate roof to connect the garage and this 1.5-story building. We would also like to extend the garage out. Currently, it takes up 30 of the 120 feet of the front facade, and we would like to push out the garage. So this pulls out and turn the face, so you're entering from the west side, or east side? No, west side. Just to de-emphasize the garage. And within that, we've been working with Heritage to look at how to mitigate that. So how we're doing our planting and such is to minimize a view of the garage from the streetscapes. And later on in the package, there's a massing diagram that looks at exactly that. We also would like to add a round porch at the corner here, which is indicated on the fire maps. Although we'd like to connect it to the front porch, which is very typical of the Queen Anne style, and it also allows us to put the doors for that porch onto that, or in the new addition, versus having to put openings somewhere else. We also feel like that adds a sort of connection between the old and the new that's going to happen to this building. As was previously stated, this is an apartment building, and as such, bringing back and revealing the historical nature has been definitely a task for us. Let's see if I can scroll down. So yeah, if you guys would like to flip to the next page, we have a rendition of where we are aesthetically. So note that colors haven't been addressed yet. We're working to figure out exactly how to best bring out the detail in those dormers. One of the things that was brought up in our initial comments was the stucco on the main building and how that is very prominently Queen Anne. Originally, we had wanted to remove that and show the 1841. After consultation with Heritage and regarding your guys' comments, we realized that the stucco there does add a lot. It differentiates the original building from any new brick additions. So, I feel like I'm going to be up here for a while. The next, if we would like to go to the Maitland facade, you would think I would never been on a computer. Here we go. So the Maitland facade is probably the most altered of all the facades from the 1886. If we look at the nice, lovely image in your report, we can see that the entire first floor is from the 1920s addition to make space for bathrooms and kitchens for the apartments, as well as the fire escape was added, fire shutters over the windows. These windows on the second floor are actually vinyl. They were replaced, I don't know, in the last 10, 15 years. So our challenge within this facade, it is a street facade. It's not the most prominent facade, which would be the King facade, but we're looking to how do we rehabilitate this? How does this become a functional space within the inside, becoming back to something that can be used by a single family, but how do we do that within the context of celebrating the historical features of this? So we've spent a lot of time on this facade trying to figure out the best way to make it coherent inside and make it respectful outside. So what we've done is taken the original gable and used it as the inspiration for this facade. So after the removal of the 1920s and the fire escapes, this becomes sort of what we would like to celebrate. In order to cover the footprint below, we're extending out that gable 13 feet.
Just pause for a sec. He's got some better photos to put up, and he's just going to do that, and that'll help you with your explanation here. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I didn't realize I got a big screen.
The clerks always know how to work the technology, luckily for us.
Sorry, there's several USBs.
Oh, it's right there.
Yes, that's the PDF one, that's right. There you go.
Awesome. Well,
So
this
that looks like the
looks-
package we have in front of us.
Yes. This one has the one that I gave you has a couple other drawings just based on our conversations yesterday with Heritage, just to give better context of sort of what decisions we made. Okay. Still. Oh. Okay. Well.
While you're doing that, just to point out something that I initially misunderstood. So the photo that's in the package, this one,
Yes.
the gable is actually not taller than the roof. It's just a perspective that makes it look like that, right?
Yes, and if you guys actually flip to the next page, that's actually, based on our conversation yesterday, something I wanted to
So then this one
show. Yeah,
is just the elevation from a flat perspective. You see the gable's lower than the ridgeline of the roof.
so that ridge line is maintained exactly. So yeah, I don't,
It's a difference of over 2 feet, 2 feet 2 inches, it looks like.
so if you guys do flip to that page, it does show what the existing building, the drawings are. And if you flip again, so I guess in talking with Alex yesterday, we just wanted to sort of show where we've been and where we're going, I guess, with the project. If you flip to the next page, you'll see the earlier rendition of this facade. This is where we are now. So we had looked at something that was higher, that was wider, and really with consultation, we began to figure out how to mitigate this facade, how to make it less prominent and more delicate, and really let the front facade shine, but within this context, still have a very well put together, thought out, very reminiscent of Queen Anne Revival as well. So if you guys, you can compare the two if you would like. That's why I put them in the package, easy comparison. As well as if you flip to the next page, we have a massing diagram that, again, was provided to the city, but not within this package or within the submission for Heritage. That looked at, so the idea was to push out that gable even a little bit further and to add that bay window to sort of soften that facade. Versus previously, it was actually quite blocky. And we wanted to, yeah, I guess soften is really the best word. So the massing is more respectful of that front facade.
So
It's also a skinnier version as well. We pushed it back further from the front facade as per the city or the heritage parameters as well.
So just pointing out to the committee, so there's 3 pages in a row and they're dated, and you'll see all in May, so May 3rd, May 11th, May 16th. The date's bottom right. And the one with no color, it's dated May 16th, is new to me even, because I met with them yesterday, and that's based on the conversations we had yesterday. That's what she was just saying about the roof details there. Go ahead.
No, thank you. So we can move then, if you would like, to the rear facade, the south facade, which is, I mean, historically, it's sort of a ramshackled. We would like to make it, again, another prominent facade within the building. I mean, there we go. So it has a lot of work going on it, not being on the streets. We still wanted it to have the presence of the other facades. So within that, we also are removing the 1920s additions, the fire escapes. We are extending out this dormer so that it's at the same elevation as the, as the other gable right here. We are also, so from the other side, we lost the historic porch, which was one of the attributes of that facade. And we wanted to still retain it in some form, even though that doesn't, I mean, from a heritage standpoint, we've demolished it, but for our own sort of nod to it and wanting to keep that detail alive in some way, we've relocated it to the south facade where you can get water views from it. So this gable gets a little bit of a hipped roof to account for that. We are, again, taking away the fire escape. We're adding 2 new dormers on the 1.5-story portion here that's going to match the dormers on the other side. And then you see there's, again, an infill space between the 1.5-story and the garage. Yeah, I think that's all on this side. So if you, yeah.
Just before we move along, we're unfortunately, because of the time and being noon, we need to perhaps take some of the
comments
material like as received and move to sort of questions from committee members. And Mr. Newman, do you have a suggestion on how we could sort of get some interaction going here?
Through you, Mr. Thank you. I appreciate we're going to lose quorum essentially in 6 minutes. The director has the discretion here to bring complex applications to the committee by way of a pre-consultation. The intention here today was to present a complex project to the committee, and in doing so get feedback on specific components of the proposal. I wonder if Jen could flip to this image here. I just really want to point members of the committee to a couple aspects of this proposal that staff have had to take a great deal of time and consideration in doing a critical review. So the porch that you see that exists there today, and the pitched roof that projects out of the building there as well. These are original attributes to the building. These are attributes that will be either removed or altered as a result of the proposal. And so we have looked at all of the alterations proposed to this property on balance. Staff are now in a position where we are comfortable with the final iterations of the drawings that are in front of you today, but that is the result of giving consideration to all of the other improvements to this property that have been presented through this project. So it would be helpful for staff, and if we don't have time today, perhaps through the Dash portal, to offer specific comments as it relates to those 2 components of the west elevation, because those 2 components are being more substantially altered than any other portion of this building.
And you've got the, so if we could just sort of, maybe I could help too, To summarize, there's the large new build on the Maitland Street side, right, which will be a library, I was told yesterday, with the large window there. That's the west elevation, right? Replacing a bunch of non-heritage features and fire escape that is existing, right? More to the point of heritage preservation is these features here that you see on this picture. So the stuff in red is being removed, right? And the gable shape of that original feature there of the top gable, which, as I repeat, is not actually above the roof line of the main house. It's below. It's just a perspective. That gable shape will move forward with the new proposed addition, which will be, which you can see where the different versions, the different dates there, ending with the May 16th proposal, which you see in black and white here. So that's the west elevation. So you see on the right, that's an addition. And the original porch and gable that you see there, which could be, we would like to preserve. One of them is being moved to the south. That's the porch, being moved to the south elevation as a new build, but basically the same feature or similar feature on the south. And then the gable is being moved forward. Do you see what's happened there?
Yeah. So the porch is right here now.
And then I guess that the little dormer you said that's a new idea from yesterday, right? The little side dormer there.
Oh, this guy, sir?
Yeah, the two dormers, the one on each side. Yeah, those two.
Yeah, those are additions.
So maybe I could just ask the committee right now. Does anyone have any comment about this proposed treatment of the west facade? I know it's hard to absorb quickly and come up with comments.
It's true. We've been working on it for months now. So.
Use your intuition and jump in. Go ahead, Don.
Well, it is such a complex project, and a lot of it is really wonderful. But I think people have put their finger on the west gable as being an issue that is a concern, but because the proposal does change the massing of the original of the Queen Anne structure quite substantially, and I guess my first reaction is, yeah, it's okay. It's good that it's below the roof line of the main roof. I still am concerned that it projects out so far. It really it goes beyond seems to extend beyond the structures in front of it. So, I guess I just wish it were the actual gable were pushed back a little bit, just so that it doesn't overhang the rest of the wall. But that's a superficial comment. But
we have used the existing door as the extent that we're pushing out, still within the extent of the existing footprint.
Sorry, and then the other aspect, if you like, is the suggestion that a second-story porch that you see there reappears on the south elevation facing the yacht club, also facing the water, which is actually a more logical spot for an outdoor space. And so I guess the question would be, does that design satisfactorily fit in with the Queen Anne Revival motif? And with the knowledge that rear elevation, the south elevation, is really very little remains from the original. So you could see that as an improvement, I suppose. Any comments about that idea? That's sort of a fairly substantial structural conceptual idea. Does anyone have any comment about that? seeing nodding. That's a good sign. All right. So I guess to repeat what Mr. Newman said, there is an opportunity through Dash to put in comments multiple times. So maybe if you need to sit down and absorb the material and go through the process, what I would ask is that because of the, yes, Ms. Agnew, maybe you can help me frame.
Sure, thank you, and through you. So we can definitely take as much technical feedback as you are willing to offer through Dash, but in light of the time and realizing this is a very important conversation and that there's critical feedback that we need from the committee, staff are also able to facilitate more of a small meeting or individual meetings with members of the committee to sit down and hear your feedback specifically if that's helpful. We're happy to do that at your convenience and can do that immediately following this meeting, looking at some dates for availability to do that.
Yeah, I found myself yesterday thinking about it quite a bit after the meeting was over, because it's a lot to absorb, and it's the balance that really jumps out at me, the balance that is being sought here, and that's what makes this project so interesting, because the balance between the original features, the fact that it's the Queen Anne revival sort of metamorphosis that went on in the late 1800s that really defines the cultural value of the structure, and then the 90 years of apartment dwelling that went on in the meantime, preserving an astonishing amount of the original value, although you wouldn't necessarily think that would be the case. I think that's a little bit of luck based on the owners of the structure over the years. I know that it was owned for the last 40 years by the Westenbergs, and they didn't really, it's not shown here, but a lot of the interior is very well preserved and maintains the value of the home and allows it to revert back to its intended use as a single-family home, which is the most exciting thing about this whole project. So I found myself thinking about it, so maybe you might need a bit of time, but the feedback that you offer would be very useful, because as you can see, even from yesterday, they've already made new suggestions to the design. So this is a live like real-time process that we can participate in. So if you really have anything to say, I encourage you to take a good look at it and meet with staff and get your feedback in. I guess the time constraint we're under now makes it difficult to make meaningful contributions, but maybe we can consider this as the introduction to the problem, and if there's anything preliminary comments, go ahead. Otherwise, there'll be time to give feedback over the next few days. Yes, Jane.
At the landscape plan, and I guess it's the south view, and wondering about how all of the pool, the wall, etc., fits in with bylaws and setbacks and things like that, and whether that needs to be considered prior to going forward with that, like setbacks for pools and fence height.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've already been talking with the city about and have applied for variances as of Monday.
Oh, you're applying for variances? Okay.
Yeah, thank you though.
Yeah, so from our point of view, it would be the Heritage District Plan and what, with the yacht club there and the rest of the Maitland Street neighborhood, sort of how that character is affected by the proposed work, right? That's everything that we say has to be in that context. So you probably need to go back to the Heritage District Plan, read what's in there about that's relevant to this application and really compare it. Unfortunately, sorry to put you all on the spot, but basically we have to take this seriously because this is a very significant project, and if we want to have a voice in it, we have to sit down and do it, and myself included. So anyway, any more preliminary comments before we move on? Yes, Mac.
I mean, a comment that is, I think it's a stunning project, and it's, I can't believe it's going back to single family. We should all be very thankful, and you guys are clearly trying to do the right thing, and for the most part, it looks very good.
I would mention too, we've application for permit, we have an HIS report that goes through all of what we're doing that Andre did up for us. So that would probably be super helpful in forming your comments as well. I know he's been a huge help in in navigating this project.
Andre hasn't spoken today, but yesterday, I mean, there is a huge amount of information in the background, the historical context of this building as well. So I encourage you to read through that when you get the chance. Yeah. So this is the pre-consultation. So the process has started. If they're ready and if staff are comfortable with it going forward, it will come back in June as a formal application. So you've got the next week or two to interact with staff if you have concerns or helpful suggestions about how to achieve that balance I was talking about. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. We're very excited. And yeah, more to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, but then we lose the items. Oh, okay. So we just lost quorum.